Welcome to Leadershipisation, all things leadership. My name is Beth Bergen. I'm a global leadership and communication coach, and I work with executives, with managers, with business owners, and I very often work with their teams as well. And I am here live on this platform most Tuesdays, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, which is Brisbane. I live in beautiful Queensland, which is 2 p.m. in Sydney, New South Wales time, or Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been talking a whole lot about different styles of leadership. And my goal in sharing those with you was really to raise your awareness about the many different styles of leadership so that you could take aspects of those to be able to experiment to add to your leadership toolkit. Because as we discovered when we were talking about those, there are many different styles, or I'll say it differently, different styles are suitable for different situations. If you've got an absolute crisis on your hands, you don't need to be having a lot of committee meetings to collaborate, to come up with a consensus. You actually need someone to be a lot more dictatorial, a lot more autocratic about the whole thing. So they're just some of many things that we looked at over those weeks. What I want to do now is to move on to one essential skill, one of many that is necessary for leadership. And this has a lot of focus on managing yourself and managing people, and that's your emotional intelligence, which is sometimes called EQ. It's more regularly known as EQ. So I want to start by looking at what is it? What is EQ? Why do I need it? And how do I know whether I need it or not? So let's start by looking at what is emotional intelligence. Well, emotional intelligence, or EQ, is your skills, your abilities, that they're the skills and abilities you have that help you to identify and understand and manage, first of all, your own emotions, and from there to identify and empathize with the emotions of others. So, put more simply, probably, it's about understanding and managing your own emotions so that you can recognize and influence the emotions of others, particularly those who are in your leadership team or who are in the team that you're managing. And why is that useful? Well, it's useful because it helps you to manage teams. It helps you to manage your own stress. It helps you to lead those teams. It helps you to deliver appropriate feedback. And it's really an important tool for you to be able to collaborate with others. And more, collaborating with others is going to get you the success that you may be looking for. So what's been proven over time is that most effective leaders, those who are most effective, have a high degree of EQ. Now, they may also have technical skills. They may also have an IQ. They're kind of entry level things now in an executive role. To move up, you actually need to have that emotional quotient. You need to have that EQ. Okay, so it's become really a must-have kind of a skill. Where you have a high IQ or high EQ, you're more likely to stay calm. You're more likely to be able to resolve conflict effectively, and you're much more likely to be able to respond to others in your team with more empathy because you can understand the emotions that they're going through. And all of these things contribute to your success as a leader. So, why do you need to have EQ? Well, let's start by examining what it might look like or how we might identify a lack of EQ. And then what I'll do is kind of bring that across to demonstrate why it's necessary. Look, in many situations in the workplace, it's really easy for conflicts and misunderstandings to happen. And they'll often happen because we're not picking up on an individual or a several team members' emotions about something. We're not listening attentively and we're not picking up what their emotions and their feelings might be because we've had this inability to recognize and to understand those emotions. When your EQ is higher, it's easier for you to do that. When individuals have difficulty managing and expressing their emotions, then quite often what happens is that we default to a behavior that we think expresses our emotions, whether it's appropriate or whether it's inappropriate. So, you know how children can throw tantrums? Often we see adults who throw tantrums, and it's because they're not able to recognize and manage and appropriately express their own emotions. So when you've got a higher IQ, EQ, watch me getting muddled with this, when you've got a higher EQ, you're able to manage and to identify and to manage and to regulate your own emotions, and it makes you much more aware of what's going on at that emotional level with others in your team. And so you can help them, you can coach them, you can support them as they identify exactly what it is that they're feeling. Often, someone who has a lower EQ struggles with active listening. Now, what we know as a leader is that we have to be fully present when we're listening. We have to be fully present and be an active listener. We're letting whoever we're speaking to, we're letting them know that we're engaged in the conversation with them. What you may also notice when there's low EQ is that there's a tension, there are strained conversations, and people aren't actually able to feel comfortable because perhaps there's a whole lot that they're feeling and thinking that they don't want to express because they're not quite sure how to manage that conversation. It makes you really tense when you're holding a lot of that stuff in. And that tension that you're feeling adds to strained conversations. The other thing you'll notice when there's a low EQ is that there's lots of finger pointing, there's lots of blaming. When things don't go quite as you might have planned them to go, then there's always somebody else to blame. There may be tears, there may be tantrums, there may be outbursts of temper. And what happens is that when we're trying really hard to suppress our emotions, when as the leader, we're not comfortable about being vulnerable, we're not able to demonstrate that we're understanding and regulating our own emotions, it shows up in lots of different ways in lots of different situations. So I thought a great thing to do that would serve you today is to give you a bit of a checklist so you can check for yourself where you think your EQ might need more work. Yeah? And by doing this, what I'll do is I'll run through this list with you, and then I'll give you a bit of homework to do. And in the session that I'm here running next week, so next week's Leadershipization, we'll actually look at what you can do to lift your EQ. Because a really awesome thing, it's kind of different from your IQ. Your IQ is a bit stationary. It's there and it stays there. We might not be using all of our IQ. With EQ, we can grow it. We can change it and we can develop it so that it reflects the kind of leadership and the level of EQ that we really want to have, which is awesome. That's one of the things I love about EQ. So, a bit of a checklist for you. Ask yourself and honestly reflect on these things. Are you someone who feels like you need to fight to be right all the time? Are you someone who often argues with others to get your point across? Yeah? Maybe what's happening there is that you're not willing to listen to others' perspective. So in some situations, you might be quite happy to listen to perspective. In others, I'm going to fight to be right. So have a think about what those different situations might be. Sometimes some people trigger us. Sometimes situations trigger us. So just be aware. Sometimes with family, we can have much less EQ than we might have or need to have in a working environment. So that's the first thing, fighting to be right all the time and arguing a lot with others. The second one is, are you someone who says and it's something inappropriate, says the wrong thing at the wrong time? Like, if you're at someone's funeral making a joke that's inappropriate, demonstrates really low EQ. So you're not kind of reading the room. So think about that. Are you someone who often says the wrong thing at the wrong time? Third one is, do you blame others all the time? Are you looking for someone to blame? What that means is that you're not learning from your own mistakes. It also means that there's a lack of accountability. You're not reflecting and recognizing the contribution that you may have made to the situation. So that blaming, if you're blaming others all the time, make a notation for yourself. The next one is this. It's really easy. The next kind of step that flows on from blaming others all the time is that it's really easy to say, oh, others misunderstand me. Like everybody thinks that I'm doing it wrong all the time. Not serving you to believe that others misunderstand you all the time. Next one, are you avoiding emotional situations? Do you hide your feelings? Is it easier for you to hide rather than to actually acknowledge what you're feeling? Are you someone who responds negatively when you're upset? Are you someone who explodes because it's easier to explode or to respond negatively than it is to actually give yourself permission to examine and to understand what the feeling might be? Next one. Are you easily triggered? Do trivial things cause great outbursts and you rant and rave and carry on about it, and it really sticks in your brain for several hours? Are you someone who's it's hard to build and maintain friendships with because you don't know how to build that emotional connection? Do you have superficial friendships rather than deep, meaningful friendships? Are you someone who needs to be the star of every single conversation? Now, most of us know someone like this. This is a person who's always done it bigger and better than you. If you had run a marathon, they'd be a triathlon. If you had made $700, they would have made $750. If you had whatever it is, this is a person who's very skilled at bringing the conversation back to them. Now, if you're not certain if that one applies to you, what I want you to do is just ask for some feedback. Have the courage to ask for feedback from others around you. Now, the reason I brought up feedback is that often someone who has low EQ is unable to handle feedback without getting defensive, and they're certainly not going to go and ask for it. Make sure that you're learning to ask for feedback, because that will be valuable leadership toolkit. It will be a valuable addition to your leadership toolkit. The next one is hard to adapt. They find it hard to adapt. That they're not always flexible or responsive to change. Now, change is a certainty, So the higher your emotional intelligence is, the more likely you are to be able to manage your team through change when change occurs in your workplace. Often someone with a low EQ is easily stressed. Think about, are you triggered easily? Are you easily stressed? Are you waiting to be offended? Are you easily offended? Do you find it hard to assert yourself? Do you ask for what you want without getting bolshy and demanding about it? Do you have a limited emotional vocabulary? Now, this is something that I often do with my coaching clients. Is a gorgeous wheel of emotion, which has lots and lots of different words at different levels for emotions that we feel. For example, if you think about the word bad, like I feel bad today. Bad might be irritable, it might be frustrated, it could be anxious, it could be I feel undervalued, I feel resentful, I feel unseen. It can be a whole range of things. Thank you, Dre. It's great to have you here. um, so be aware that if you've got this limited emotional vocabulary, it means that you're not actually connecting with your emotion. We often talk about, I'm really angry. And there are so many different levels of that word and that emotion. Next one is, do you jump to assumptions really quickly? And then, because you're fighting to be right, you hold that position. You just hold on to it. And because you're holding on to that position, you're also someone who's likely to hold on to grudges for a long period of time. Let them go. Maybe you're someone who doesn't get angry or doesn't really feel the emotions because you're pushing them down so hard. And you think that you're doing a great job because you're controlling that one emotion which you're familiar with or which you're allowing yourself to feel, which is anger. Emotions are energy in motion. They're meant to be expressed. Finally, I think I've already said this one. Are you someone who's really easily offended? Do you get offended and kind of, what did they say that about me for? Your emotional intelligence is lower. So that's a huge list. Phew, what a lot. Remember that there are different situations and different people who might lead you to respond in a different way. They're going to trigger you to respond in a different way because of your past experiences with them. As I said earlier, the really great thing is that unlike your IQ, you can learn new skills which will really build up your EQ. So how are we going to do this? Well, we're going to look at that in a whole lot more detail next week. But what I'd like you to do as a place to start, I'd like you to do this homework. EQ, as I said earlier, is all about understanding and managing your emotions and recognizing and influencing the emotions of those around you. So there are two things that I would really like you to do. The first one is this: pay attention to your emotions, especially those strong ones. And just make a note of what was I feeling and what was it that may have triggered that. Because that will help you to start to get comfortable with that, to dig down into it a little bit and identify, was it bad? Was it anxious? Was it vulnerable? Was it unseen? Was it undervalued? Or one of those many other layers of that particular emotion that you're feeling. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to notice the emotions of others. So notice what you're noticing about others and what may have, or what or who or why those particular emotions might be present. Now, by doing this, what we're looking at lifting is your social awareness when you're noticing others, but also your own self-awareness. And these are two components of building and developing your emotional intelligence. Okay, that's me for this week. Thank you very much for watching. If you've watched the replay, put hashtag replay on the platform that you're watching it on. If you've got questions or comments, I'm so open to responding to those for you. Yell out, leave us a message. We'll connect with you and respond as quickly as we can. In the meantime, enjoy your week, and I look forward to seeing you here Tuesday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time or 2 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time next Tuesday. Bye now.